You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to cuw.edu.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Monday, September 30th. Yesterday, Feast of St. Michael and All Angels.
It was fantastic.
Also started Rosh Hashanah last night.
It did.
Sundown.
Mm-hmm.
What other calendars can we, chime into here?
There was a music and sacred space at Hope in the city.
That's right. Yeah.
They have a whole long series of things happening now because they have a fantastic new organ and a completely renovated church space. It's beautiful.
Lots of good things, particularly when it comes to church and church music, to order our days, to structure our time. And hymns are a great way to do that as well, because hymns for various seasons. And we get to talk about hymns today. I know I can hear you, just the excitement welling up inside you.
It's true.
Particularly hymn writers and translators. In studio with us today, the Reverend Dr. Jon Vieker, Senior Assistant to the President of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming to the Coffee Hour this morning, spending some time with us, and talking about hymn writers.
Amen.
One
of my favorite topics.
I was looking for a book the other day. I was like, I need to get Dr. Vieker's book on this, because I was looking into the subject of church music, and I was like, where else should I go? So I was reading the Schock biography, and then I realized I needed to stop and put it down so I could get the rest of my work done. What makes a good hymn writer? What makes a good hymn writer?
Well, a good hymn writer, I think, uses the Bible as the main source of his inspiration. I'm talking about the text writer, of course. The musician is another story. But for somebody who wants to write a hymn, I think it's important to use the Bible as the main source. I think it's important to put Jesus at the very center of the hymn, so it's not just explication of a biblical text, but also shows the Christology of it and how Jesus is at the center of every page of the Bible and of every page of the hymnal, God willing. So those kinds of things, and I think that a hymn writer should also be disciplined, so that the rhymes actually rhyme. That's where I'm coming from my understanding, and that the right number of syllables in the line and the accents on the right syllable and all of those kinds of things. It's challenging, very challenging work.
Yeah,
and it doesn't just happen.
Yeah,
magically pours out on the page. Well, and there's good texts, and then there's really great texts that when you sing through them, they make sense, and you don't question the rhymes at the end of lines. Like, wait a second, that was.
If it's in Hebrew, everything ends in eem, so it's probably easier to write them.
Do you write hymns in Hebrew, Andy? Do you have a hymn writer or two that has influenced you? And maybe this is a long list, but maybe one or two that have really influenced you in the way that you approach hymns.
Well, the important thing about a hymn text is that it be accessible immediately. You can't write something so complicated and difficult to understand that people are scratching their heads as they go through it. On the other hand, you don't want to have it be as simple as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, where the language and everything is so simple that people grow tired of it and they don't never want to or need to sing it again. Mm-hmm. Some of the challenges with hymns today is not so much what they say, but they don't say much of anything. Mm-hmm. And so you want to have it say something, and you want to have it say it in a language that's a little bit elevated, but not above the sixth graders level to understand, or even younger than that. And so hymn writers, I think, you can have a range of hymn writers. For instance, in our tradition, Martin Franzmann, I would raise him up as the first really great Missouri Synod 20th century hymn writer, who was a classics professor and wrote in an elevated style, and in some cases too elevated, I would say. And not every hymn a hymn writer writes makes its way into a hymnal, but we have a half a dozen or more of his hymns, like "Thy Strong Word," "Preach You the Word," some wonderful texts, and you get them. And some of them you have to study a little bit more. So there can be a range. I would put him more at the upper range, and I think he's a great hymn writer.
Now I just want to sit and listen to stories about hymn writers.
I know.
How will the upcoming symposium, this is coming up November 10th through the 14th, correct, at Concordia Theological Seminary. How will this symposium contribute to good hymn writing and hymn translation as well?
Well, this is an exciting time. The Good Shepherd Institute was founded 20 years ago, and by institute it basically means a conference that's held every year and that also publishes their papers and does a few other things. But the Good Shepherd Institute at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne is now having its 20th annual conference, and the topic is A Living Tradition and Something New. So it's going to take a look at this, the use of psalms in hymnody. But the title of their institute speaks also that hymnody is a living tradition. It's not some kind of museum piece that we just pull off the shelf and use as filler on a Sunday morning service because we need to do something old or whatever. This is a living tradition. There are new hymn writers, and how do we cultivate that? So every few years, the Office of National Mission has tagged on to the Good Shepherd Institute and offered a little extension of the Good Shepherd Institute, a symposium on hymn writing, mostly on the text part of hymn writing. And this time and last time we have invited a number of international folks who are, from countries such as Uganda and Indonesia and the Ukraine and Kenya and Lithuania and China, who are working on hymn projects, who are translating Lutheran hymns into their languages, who are using indigenous hymnody from their own tradition in their own churches and trying to put it together. We're going to bring those folks together, and we've invited any Americans brave enough to show up who are hymn writers and want to expand their craft and learn from the internationals, and the internationals learn from them and from the mentors and the instructors that we have for this special symposium. The topic and title of the symposium is Teach Us Jesus Christ to Know Aright. Teach us to know Jesus through the hymns. It's a line from Luther's O Lord, we praise you, bless you, and adore you, his famous communion hymn.
I really need to go to this now.
Yeah, you missed out, but it's not too late.
I know. I need to go. Talking about international hymn writing too. That's so many more questions. Who are some of the speakers that are going to be giving some of these presentations?
Well, when you deal with international hymnody, and I would just point out, too, it's very interesting. The great missionary century was the 19th century, where churches all over the world, especially Protestant churches and Lutheran churches, were sending missionaries into third world or into foreign countries, and this was a big deal. Those churches were founded in the 19th, early 20th century, and every church brought its own hymnody and taught it to the people who were there. But that hymnody has grown and expanded and had become indigenous. The old hymnody is there, but also new songs and new texts. And now those texts are coming back to us. We see some of that in Lutheran Service Book. There's a dozen or so international world hymnody, as they call. So a number of great folks are going to be on hand. Peter Bender, a pastor of Peace Lutheran in Sussex, Wisconsin, the catechist, as we call him, is going to talk about using hymnody as catechesis, hymns of the catechism. Mark DeGarmo, who teaches at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota, who's done a lot of translating Norwegian and other Scandinavian things, is going to talk about translating hymns. Joseph Hurl, the walking encyclopedia of hymnology, who's one of our own at Concordia University in Nebraska, is going to talk about the Lutheran service book, Companion to the Hymns, and other things. So Robert Rhine, who's translated a lot of operas from other languages, is going to talk about the intricacies of getting things to match up and rhyme, and even though his name is Rhine, but it's going to rhyme. And then his wife Sandra is a deaconess, and she's been in charge of a number of, or helping facilitate a number of international hymnal projects in Chinese and Amharic and Swahili. So some really great. And then, of course, Stephen Starkey, the dean of LCMS Hymnody, who's written a couple hundred hymns and published widely, will be there to mentor and guide and help these young hymn writers, and some not so young.
With just about 30 seconds left, registration, how do we find out more about this?
Well, you can go to lcms.org, and you asked me the question I don't really know.
We'll provide a link in the program notes today. Sure. We'll provide a link.
And
lcms.org, look for the Symposium for Hymn Writers and Translators, and we'll provide a link in the program notes as well. It's coming up November 10th through the 14th at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, a part of, in addition to the Good Shepherd Institute. We share a lot of the Good Shepherd Institute hymns right here on our music hours here on KFUO. Thank you so much, Dr. Vieker, for being our guest this morning on the Coffee Hour.
Thank you. It's an honor as always.
I'm Eddie Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.